Hey, Tech Fails Army, welcome back to the channel where we dig up the dustiest skeletons from the closet of innovation. Today, we're not talking about some obscure Kickstarter flop or a minor software glitch. We are focusing on a massive, company-wide technology scandal that cost a giant millions. We're talking about Amazon. They print money, they run the internet, and they deliver everything you could ever need right to your doorstep. But even they are not immune to epic failure, and this one was truly epic. It's 2014, Amazon is riding high, the Kindle is a revolution, and Amazon Web Services, or AWS, is quietly becoming a trillion-dollar behemoth. CEO Jeff Bezos decides the time is right to conquer the one market that has so far eluded him, the smartphone. They weren't aiming for a budget device or a niche market. They went for the whole damn thing. They developed what they believed would be a flagship killer, a device that could sit right alongside the iPhone and the Samsung Galaxy. They called it the Amazon Fire Phone, and in the end, it was an absolute, unmitigated $170 million disaster. A true tale of overreach and technological hubris. Before we get into this deep dive, I need you to hit that like button and subscribe. It tells the algorithm you appreciate seeing these colossal technological disasters we uncover. Now, let's go back to the beginning. To understand why the Fire Phone failed, we first have to look at the immense ambition that fueled its creation. Amazon didn't just contract a third party to build this phone. They built an entire dedicated smartphone division from the ground up. This division was known internally as Lab 126. This was the same legendary team responsible for the successful Kindle e-reader and the revolutionary Echo devices that came later. This phone wasn't a small side project. This was a dedicated, multi-year, multi-million-dollar effort. The company invested incredible amounts of capital, resources, and top talent into this endeavor. CEO Jeff Bezos himself was reportedly heavily involved in the project's direction and micromanagement. The internal vision was clear and singular: to conquer the mobile world and establish Amazon as a hardware leader. The vision wasn't just to make a phone that ran the Amazon app well, either. The vision was to make a phone that was the Amazon store, a constant, direct shopping portal in your pocket. The engineers were under immense pressure, and there was constant internal battle between ambitious design goals and practical execution. This kind of high-stakes internal tension often precedes a major failure. You have too many cooks, too much money, and one singular visionary, Bezos, whose pet project could not, under any circumstances, fail in his eyes. This led to decisions that prioritized spectacle over common sense. The Fire Phone launched in the summer of 2014, and when it finally hit the market, the world was spectacularly underwhelmed. This disappointment centered almost entirely on one feature. Why? Because the device's entire identity was built around a complex, expensive, and ultimately unnecessary gimmick. Remember the input content? It mentioned the unpopular 3D gimmick. That gimmick was called dynamic perspective. This was the technological core of the device, the feature Amazon was betting everything on to differentiate it from the iPhone and Android phones. Here's how this costly feature worked. The Fire Phone wasn't a regular smartphone that only had two cameras. It had four front-facing infrared cameras, one located in each corner of the screen. These four dedicated infrared cameras tracked the precise position of the user's head in relation to the screen in real time. It was advanced technology, but it was total overkill. Using this constantly updated tracking data, the phone could render the user interface in a kind of simulated 3D. The screen would subtly shift based on your head movements. For example, you could tilt your head slightly to peek around a corner in a map or to reveal additional menu items hidden on the side of the screen. In a few specialized games, it was used for looking around the environment. This sounds cool on paper, right? Like something straight out of a futuristic movie. But in reality, it was a practical mess that actively hindered the user experience. First, those four extra cameras running constantly, plus the necessary processing power to render the shifting 3D perspective, were a massive drain on the battery life. The phone simply couldn't last a full day. Second, it was incredibly fiddly and disorienting to use for everyday tasks. Instead of simply tapping or swiping, the ingrained muscle memory of the smartphone age, users were forced to physically tilt and bob their heads. It was a novelty, a classic example of a feature that wore off in about 5 minutes of use and then became actively annoying for day-to-day operations. It was technology that did not solve a problem. It created several. Dynamic perspective was supposed to be Amazon's multi-touch moment, the killer feature that forced the rest of the market to play catch-up. Instead, it became the punchline. It was the single greatest miscalculation in this entire technology scandal. It ballooned the manufacturing cost, required proprietary parts, and ultimately delivered zero utility to the average consumer. Now, let's talk about the second critical error mentioned in the input, the high price. This decision was utterly baffling given Amazon's history. Who was Amazon competing with in 2014? The market was dominated by Apple and Samsung. They were the established, premium, top-tier brands. Amazon's core business model had always been rooted in providing value, often selling hardware at a loss, like the Kindle, just to get users locked into their ecosystem. The Fire Phone completely abandoned this philosophy. Amazon priced the Fire Phone at a truly premium price, $199 with a 2-year contract and $650 outright for the base model. Let's put that in sharp context. That was the exact same price point as the iPhone 5S and the Samsung Galaxy S5, the current flagship models from the undisputed market leaders. This pricing was commercial suicide. Amazon, a complete newcomer to the premium smartphone space, expected consumers to choose an unknown device with a questionable 3D gimmick over a tried and true, established iPhone or Galaxy. It was delusionally optimistic. Why didn't they price it aggressively to gain market share? The internal whispers point to two main reasons behind this critical failure of strategy. 1. The expensive, custom-built hardware, especially those 4 dedicated infrared cameras, drove the bill of materials through the roof. They simply couldn't afford to sell it for much less without incurring an even more immediate and catastrophic loss. 2. Sheer pride. Jeff Bezos reportedly genuinely believed the phone and its unique technology were worth a premium price. He believed the technology would sell itself. The initial launch also suffered severely from carrier restrictions. Amazon partnered exclusively with AT&T in the United States. This created an artificial barrier to entry. This kind of exclusive lock-in was already becoming a relic of the past in 2014. Consumers were increasingly demanding unlocked phones and carrier flexibility, and Amazon ignored this trend. By shackling the Fire Phone to a single network, Amazon immediately alienated a vast portion of the potential market right out of the gate. They shrunk their already niche audience. A successful phone isn't just a piece of attractive hardware. It's a window into a robust ecosystem. Apple has iOS. Google has Android. Amazon had their own variant, Fire OS. Fire OS was based on the Android Open Source Project, or AOSP, which is the basic open source version of Android. However, Amazon completely gutted the essential core Google services. This meant no Google Play Store, no official Google Maps, no Gmail, and critically, no official YouTube app. This created an instant deal breaker for millions of potential customers. This was a calculated but disastrous risk. Amazon wanted users to use the Amazon App Store, which was much smaller and often out of date compared to the competition. For users, this was a massive daily inconvenience. Want to use a popular non-Amazon app? Good luck. Developers had to actively port their apps to the Amazon environment. Many simply didn't bother. The App Store felt like a ghost town compared to the vibrant, active ecosystems of Apple and Google. Developers follow users, and the users were not there. The final feature in the ecosystem that raised eyebrows was called Firefly. This was Amazon's attempt to integrate their retail dominance directly into the phone's basic functions. Firefly allowed you to point the phone's camera at almost anything in the real world: a CD cover, a book, a product in a store, even a TV show playing in the background. The phone would instantly identify it using audio and visual recognition, and then immediately provide a direct link to purchase it on Amazon. It was undeniably clever technology. But Firefly only served to crystallize the public perception of the Fire Phone. It wasn't primarily a communication device or a useful tool. It was perceived as a dedicated shopping tool. Users didn't want a phone that constantly urged them to spend money. They wanted a phone that helped them communicate and live their lives. This design philosophy was fundamentally flawed. The launch was spectacular, but for all the wrong reasons. The press reviews were universally brutal. They universally trashed the dynamic perspective gimmick and the exorbitant price. Reviewers called the phone gimmicky, overpriced, and famously, a solution in search of a problem. The negative consensus was overwhelming and immediate. The public spoke even louder with their wallets. The initial sales figures were so poor they immediately qualified this launch as a historical technical disaster. In just 3 short months after its massive launch, Amazon was forced to make a humiliating admission of failure. They slashed the price of the Fire Phone. The contract price dropped from the initial $199 down to just 99 cents, literally overnight. This move signaled to the entire world and the market that the product was already dead on arrival. Anyone who had paid the full premium price just weeks earlier felt rightfully angry and betrayed. The move damaged customer trust in their premium products. The price cut ultimately failed to move the needle significantly. The damage was done. The press had moved on, and the public had already made its decision. The most damning financial revelation came just a few months later, in October 2014, when Amazon reported its quarterly earnings to investors. The loss was staggering. They disclosed that they had taken a massive $170 million inventory write-down on the Fire Phone. That's a $250 million charge just for unsold units piled up in their warehouses. The scale of this financial failure is immense. It stands as one of the biggest single-product financial blows in the history of consumer electronics. This was a catastrophic failure of strategy. This wasn't just a failure to sell a few phones, it was a historical technical disaster that resulted from an overwhelming misreading of the market and a failure of leadership to pivot away from a demonstrably bad idea. The Amazon Fire Phone was officially discontinued in the autumn of 2015, barely a year after its disastrous launch. It became a permanent, expensive footnote in the history of tech fails. But what lessons can we, the tech fails army, draw from this incredible technology scandal? There are 3 critical takeaways for any company attempting to innovate. Lesson number 1, price must match value. The single most critical mistake was the pricing strategy. Amazon should have used its leverage and distribution to aggressively undercut the market. Instead, they used the cost of a gimmick to justify flagship pricing. A new entrant, even one as powerful as Amazon, must offer significantly more value for the same money to disrupt the established leaders. Lesson number 2, gimmicks don't sell, utility does. Dynamic perspective was an engineering marvel, but it offered no real utility. Consumers want features that make their lives easier, not features that force them to interact with a device in awkward new ways. Lesson number 3, the ecosystem is everything. Amazon's decision to ditch Google services in favor of the much weaker Amazon App Store was fatal. Without a complete, well-supported, and vibrant ecosystem, even a great phone, which the Fire Phone wasn't, cannot survive. The Fire Phone is the perfect case study of a tech giant getting blinded by its own hubris. They believed the Amazon brand name and a single expensive gimmick could overcome fundamental market realities. They were dead wrong. It remains a massive, costly reminder that in the hyper-competitive world of tech, even billions of dollars and the world's most powerful CEO cannot save a fundamentally flawed product. And that is the true legacy of this sunset product. What do you think, Tech Fails Army? Did you own a Fire Phone? Let me know in the comments below if you think the 3D was a cool idea or just a waste of money. As always, thank you for watching. Hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into the biggest technological disasters and failures in history. We'll catch you next time. Stay safe and don't buy the hype.